In this video we're going to talk about industrial democracy and employee relations. However, really the topic will focus probably just as much on employee participation, which is our subheading for this class. So let's start by looking at employee participation. Well, according to the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, the CIPD, employee participation is a process of employee involvement designed to provide employees with the opportunity to influence and, where appropriate, take part in decision making on matters which affect them. So it's simply a mechanism to involve the employees in decision making, particularly in areas that affect them directly, in their working conditions, in their remuneration, in their holiday entitlements, and so on. So it's involving the employees in the decision-making process. Employee participation is concerned with employee rights to influence and take part in management decision-making. So employee participation, involvement is a separate issue which we'll discuss later, but employee participation is concerned with employee rights to influence and take part in management decision making. So the employees are involved, they are participating in the decision making process. Employees, along with their representatives, exert a degree of power over management decisions, in particular decisions concerning employment. Clearly, there are two sides involved in employee relations. There is the employees, quite obviously, but also the management. There are other stakeholders and interested parties, for example the government, which may set down the legal parameters within which employee relations will be conducted. It may also be the European Union and outside agencies of all sorts who may have an input into how employee relationships are conducted. But as far as we're concerned here, the employees, along with their representatives, perhaps their trade union representatives, exert a degree of power over management. I could also argue, of course, that management exert a degree of power over the employees. It's the management who, in a sense, pay the employees. It's negotiated pay, but nonetheless, if the organisation is badly managed, the chances are the employees will be poorly paid. So it's a two-way street, but both combine to find an equitable solution to problems. The employees are invited to participate, to give their opinions, and their opinions will be listened to and respected by the employers. Participation creates opportunities for employees to influence decisions that affect them. It gives them greater control and freedom of choice. So they're not passively being swept along and being told by management what's going to happen to them. They are active. They have a role. They've been given a role, and they may participate in the whole process. So they're informed and they know. The main distinction between employee participation and employee involvement, which I briefly mentioned earlier, but the main distinction here is that employee participation relates to employee participation relates to the pluralist or collectivist approach. It's aimed at employee control and their involvement in management decisions. So employee participation is the employees getting together and operating as a cohesive group and dealing with management in that way. They operate through perhaps representatives. Could be the union representative. and the union representative deals with the management, and in that way there is participation. It goes through the union representative who deals with management over issues of employment, working conditions, health and safety, holiday entitlements, and so on. Employee involvement is more an individualist or unitarist approach. It's aimed at gaining employee commitment to the organisational goals and relies on management control. Getting involvement is gaining the employee commitment, getting them to be involved. It involves a commitment on the part of the employees. They must want to be involved. And they must agree with the organisational goals, to be committed to the organisational goals. So involvement is much stronger, it's much more active in a sense. It's getting the employees to subscribe to the direction in which the business is moving and the aspirations of the management in terms of what they want for the business. Participation is where they are agreeing to talk about issues, and they're going through perhaps their union representative and dealing with issues in a looser form. There are two types of employee participation: direct participation and, would you believe, indirect participation. Now, direct participation, well, the employees are given a limited say or voice about decisions that affect their routines and responsibilities at work. So participation, they're given a limited say. They can question processes, and they can make recommendations, but it's limited. Management still have the authority to push through what they see as the correct way. In terms of the power relationship, it resides with management. Management still have the authority to get what they want, but the employees have a right to express their opinions. It includes financial involvement such as pay or rewards, incentives, problem solving, quality, team performance. So the employees may make recommendations related to any of the areas that involve them. As to whether the recommendations will be accepted or not really depends on the management and how the management see the recommendations, and whether they think the recommendations are worth implementing or not. So the final say still resides with the management. This form of participation is aimed at increasing employee motivation and commitment at work. For example, profit-related reward schemes. There are two ways of looking at this. One is to think, well, by inviting the employees to participate and to discuss issues, there is a positive impact on motivation. Perhaps greater productivity, less disputes, more continuity of employment, less absenteeism, more involvement, they feel that they're being listened to. They could also be rewarded by having profit-related pay, for example. If the organisation is doing well, they get a bonus. So again, it reinforces the participation. Now, indirect participation, this type of participation involves employees and employers' representatives who participate in decision making. In this case, the employees will select, let's say, a union representative and ask the union representative to represent them. And the management may appoint somebody on the staff to talk to the union representative. So it's done indirectly. The more direct way is the employees talking to management directly, the one we just dealt with earlier. Indirect, they go through perhaps a union representative or some trusted person amongst the employees. They turn to one person to represent them, and the management on the other side appoints someone to discuss with this person various issues, and it's done indirectly. The aim is to meet under agreed conditions to discuss matters of mutual interest to both parties. So they can come with almost a shopping list of things they want to talk about, and providing those things they want to talk about relate to the processes within the company, the aspects that relate to the workers and affect the workers directly, then they are valid for discussion. So we can imagine a scenario where there is let's say a union representative, or perhaps 2 or 3 representatives, who go to a meeting with management, and some designated managers are appointed to have discussions with the union representatives, and to discuss issues that are brought up by the workforce in general, and find out what can be done about them, and go away with solutions perhaps, or some way of reconciling differences. It's a type of participation that's based on industry democracy, and involves procedures such as the Joint Consultative Committee, Works Council, and the European Works Council. So when we hear terms like Joint Consultative Committee, Works Council, European Works Council, we can think along the lines of industrial democracy. It's not dissimilar to what we have in, let's say, the UK or throughout Europe. We have representative government. So when the Prime Minister speaks, the Prime Minister has the authority to speak on behalf of everyone in the UK. We have elected the government. And providing the whole process is legitimate, providing the rules have been followed and it's fair and it's seen to be fair by everyone, then the Prime Minister, when he or she speaks, they represent the population. So it's similar to that. Here the workers nominate a member from amongst themselves, a member of the trade union or whoever, and that person speaks on behalf of the workers. So it's a type of industrial democracy. We also have this idea of consultation. Consultation plays a key role in understanding employee participation techniques and their structures. Consultation, to consult, to talk to. From a legal perspective, consultation is a process where arrangements are made in a formal meeting. So consultation is when both sides in this, of the company, let's say the management and the employees, proverbially sit down together to draw up an agreement. There's a process of consultation, trying to find a solution to a problem, and once the solution is found, they agree to it. The process is concerned with talking to and listening to employee representatives on issues concerning employees and their employment. Generally speaking, the issues are brought by the employees to the consultation process. They're brought into the consultative arena. They are discussed by the trade union or whoever represents the employees. They're discussed by the trade union and the management to try and find a solution. Consultation is focused on reaching an agreement between employees, representatives and employers. So consultation is trying to debate an issue, trying to find out what the solution is, what's agreeable to both sides, exploring all the possibilities. And consultation must take place before management make a decision. Generally speaking, that's good practice. Workers do not like surprises. They don't like to arrive in one day to find management has changed something, or has changed the work process, or changed their obligations or their contracts even, or is proposing to change the contracts, or they don't like it. the labour force by and large like to be consulted in advance, so there are no surprises. Everything's discussed, changes are made, and differences are accommodated, and recommendations are accepted and discussed again. Finally, there is an outcome, and that should be agreeable to both sides. Employees must have the opportunity to participate and offer suggestions for consideration. If they don't, they will be alienated. They will lose motivation, they may want to leave the company, they may be upset about, and this can manifest itself in all sorts of ways. There may be even a type of vandalism, in the sense of they're not diligent about the quality of the work that's going through. They're not paying attention anymore. They're not motivated. It could be damage to the organisation. But moving away from that extreme, it could simply be the case that they're not motivated and they're not applying themselves. They're not working as hard. Productivity is falling. There's a high absenteeism from the business. Eventually key workers will leave, and it's not good. So by and large, employees should have the opportunity to participate and offer suggestions for consideration. During consultation, employee suggestions are taken into account. However, they're not always accepted. Management don't have to accept suggestions from the employees. It should be a forum where there is discussion. Perhaps more precise explanation on the part of management may allay the fears of the workforce. So it's not that the management has to change their recommendations. Perhaps they simply haven't explained the logic behind the particular proposal. But once it's explained, perhaps the workforce will accept it. It may be the case that it has to be changed, it has to be modified. It's too extreme as it stands. It needs to be watered down, made more acceptable. Rejection of some proposal could be based on financial reasons. The employees must be fully informed of the outcome. So all of the associated conditions related to a particular proposal, all these various other conditions like employment, security of employment, hours worked, holiday entitlement, remuneration, how much bonuses or how much salary is going to be paid, or wages, all of these should be set out so there is complete transparency. Consultation should be seen as a means of communication, the exchange of ideas, interest and views affecting employees and the organisation. So consultation is a very wide process. It really is two-way communications. It should be two-way. It should be the employees talking to management, but management talking to the employees, and on a particular topic, the topic being some proposal. The proposal perhaps coming from management about some desired change in the organisation. But it should be an exchange of ideas about this. Could it be done differently? So getting a wide variety of views. Under the European Union Directive for Informing and Consulting Employees, organisations consisting of more than 150 employees must be informed about current economic conditions impacting on the business success and future. So if an organisation has more than 150 employees, the organisation must inform the employees about the current economic conditions impacting on the business. Now, for those of you who are interested in economics, you can see here that this might be handing to competition or competitive organisations in other countries key economic data which may be leaked. It may suggest that producers in one country are weak. They haven't got a lot of reserves. The company is not very stable, which may give hope to international competitors in other countries to increase production or watch that sector and be ready to step in if the company fails. So, although we can see the logic of the European directive, if there's more than 150 employees, the employees should be informed. We can also see some dangers associated with that. The directive also requires that the employees be briefed about the current and future employment prospects. People need to plan their lives. They take on financial obligations in the form of mortgages for houses or buying land or buying into various projects and using their incomes as a form of investment and taking on obligations. So they should be informed about the security of their employment. But of course, there's also a problem there that is a little bit of crystal ball gazing. It's asking the company to work out precisely what's going to happen to itself over a certain period of time. And most companies don't know that. They work on the expectation that they will be okay and that they will survive. But new competitors could arise. There could be a change in consumer tastes. There could be some discovery that destroys the particular product they make, and this new product becomes most popular with the customers. So we understand the logic. It's just there may be issues associated with these. The employees should be informed and consulted about any issue relating to employee, their employment contract, such as redundancies. Now, if the employment contract is changed and let's say the issues associated with redundancies that are mentioned in the employment contract, that should be communicated to the employees. Certainly, that is important. And that does not give competitors any crucial information or any essential information about the business. It simply informs the employees that the company wishes to change the terms of redundancy. But of course, the employees should have a right to respond to this and negotiate it and be not only consulted, but the management should then take on the process of explaining and perhaps ameliorating some of the harsher terms and looking for other ways to compensate the employees and so on. There should be an agreement, in other words, about the proposed change. So we understand the logic of the European directive. Workers should know about the economic conditions of the business. Will they have a job in a year's time? Will they be able to meet their obligations? Be able to pay for school fees or health insurance or whatever they have to pay for? Can they do this? And they should be briefed about the current and future employment prospects. Is the market for the product buoyant or is it declining? What stage is the product in terms of its life cycle? What's the company plans for new products and innovations, and what's the company doing to secure the future? So it's important that the workers, the employees, are informed about these issues because it affects them. So consultation plays an important role in employee participation procedures. Employee participation involves a range of processes. As I said earlier, the joint consultative committees. That's one way of having participation, where the employees and the management involve in joint consultative committees. They form a committee and both sides discuss issues and feedback to each of their constituencies. So the management will feed back to the rest of management, and let's say the trade union who's involved in the joint consultative committee, let's say, will feed back to the employees. And they act as a conduit for the flow of ideas from the ordinary employees right up to the Joint Consultative Committee, where issues can be discussed and any responses fed back to the employees, but also to the rest of management. Could be works councils. So in some respects, quite an old-fashioned idea, but a very interesting idea, where the employees don't have a trade union, but they do agree to cooperate and have a committee for mutual support, not just support within the organisation in terms of employment and monitoring health and safety and so on, but also taking ideas, perhaps some ideas which could be seen as innovative, up to management, about the organisation of the business, about the procedures of the business. So it's a works council. Ideas are fed into the works council, and the representatives of the works council meet with management and discuss those ideas. Could be collective bargaining, where, let's say, the members of the workforce, the employees, get together and there could be a union representative, let's say, selected, and the union person will speak on behalf of the membership and will go to management with various ideas, and will have discussions with management, and will feed back to the employees. It's collective bargaining. The person who goes to management is bargaining collectively. It's bargaining for all of the members who put that person there. There's also the European Works Council, another institution. Let's talk about the Joint Consultative Committees before we get on to the others, and Works Councils. The Joint Consultative Committee and Works Councils are arrangements for employees, representatives and management to meet on a regular basis and discuss issues of shared interest. So this idea it suggests that the Joint Consultative Committees and the Works Councils, they meet on a regular basis. Once a month, once a week, depends. So they have a time slot in which they meet, and when they meet they have an agenda, and on the agenda will be points put on by each side, and those points will be points for discussion. They will be discussed, some solutions found, some recommendations, perhaps some amendments to points which will be further discussed at the next meeting. The feelings of the employees will be canvassed by the members of the Joint Consultative Committee who represent the employees, and the rest of the employees can have a say and debate it amongst themselves, so that in the following meeting the issue can be discussed again, and this time the feelings and the depth of feelings of the employees can be taken into account. And in this way the organisation moves forward, meeting problems and issues and discussing them openly in these forums. The committee consists of senior management, employee representatives and a chairperson to control and facilitate the agenda. So it is a meeting. There is senior management. It's taken seriously. Senior management will be involved, and employee representatives, perhaps the trade union or the chairperson of the Works Council, or whoever's been nominated. And there will be a chairperson who will try to be as independent as possible, but try to move the business on, and will control the agenda and control the pace of the discussion, and make sure the discussions are businesslike and focused on the issues. So there's discipline within the discussions. The aim of the Joint Consultative Committee is to develop positive relationships, avoid conflict, increase bargaining power and follow legislation. So it tries to bring about positive relationships within the workforce, greater understanding. So the representatives of the employees can go back and talk about what was discussed and what the management said and what they felt and what the outcomes were, and look for to see if it's suitable and meets agreement amongst the employees, and if it does, report back so that the policy could be implemented. If it's not, take back the outstanding issues and have further discussions. So it increases bargaining power and it avoids conflict. Otherwise, if these institutions did not exist, if there was no joint consultative committee or works council, issues may arise in the minds of the employees, which will fester, will grow into be big problems, and eventually perhaps lead to a strike or withdrawal of labour. Collective bargaining. Well, collective bargaining is also an employee participation technique. Employee representatives, for example trade unions and management, discuss issues relating to employment such as pay, holidays, working conditions and other aspects of the employment contract. So here the employees nominate someone to speak on their behalf, perhaps a union representative, and that union representative will meet with management and discuss issues. And the issues discussed could be very wide-ranging, as I just said, pay, holidays, working conditions, health and safety, all sorts of issues. Collective bargaining is a result of dispute. Normally collective bargaining arises because there's some issue to discuss. They don't just meet for the sake of it, they meet because there is an issue, and this issue could cause a major dispute, or it could be just at the moment a dispute, a conflict between employees and management, something that needs to be resolved. So collective bargaining is the result of a dispute. It doesn't just happen for the fun of it. It happens because there is a problem that needs to be discussed. So there is a dispute, and it's trying to arrest the dispute before it escalates into a major dispute which could lead to the withdrawal of labour, strikes, all sorts of issues, and even the survival of the business itself. The Joint Consultative Committee is a form of consultation and a software element of negotiation. There's no third party involved. The Joint Consultative Committee is the representatives of the employees, let's say the trade union, and the management. Just the two parties. So it hasn't got as far as being a dispute which warrants outside intervention, or even the facilities of major institutions like ACAS, the Advisory, Conciliation and Arbitration Service. But it's just simply it's a talking shop with a purpose. It means that the employees can raise their concerns, they can be addressed before this problem gets too big, where a real dispute in terms of conflict, obvious conflict, exists between the employees and management. So it's an important institution, an important way forward. I mentioned earlier the European Work Council. Well, the Joint Consultative Committee is a voluntary act of consultation. However, the European Works Council is mandatory under the 1994 European Works Council Directive. So the European Works Council is compulsory. The Joint Consultative Committee is voluntary. That's where both sides agree voluntarily to meet, the Joint Consultative Committee. But the European Works Council, this is mandatory. This is compulsory. In compliance for the directive, the European Works Council must be established in all companies consisting over 1,000 workers within the EU, or minimum 150 workers in at least 2 member states. So if the company has this sort of distribution of employment, or this absolute number of employees, then they must establish this European Works Council and must have this agency within their business to deal with issues. The aim of the European Works Council is to develop a two-way communication between employees and management, avoid conflict, and to gain cooperation in the workplace environment. So it's meant to force employees and employers to talk about issues. It's mandatory. It's forcing the two sides to meet on a regular basis to discuss issues, to discuss problems, and in that way to try to ensure that the problems do not become amplified and result in all-out strikes or disputes, which can be disruptive to the country and to other industries within the country, as well as to the industry itself or the company itself. And to avoid all of those issues, the European directive is to force the two sides to meet, to talk, and have meetings and to discuss issues. But the employment criteria is as set out in point number 2. All companies must be over 1,000 workers within the EU, or a minimum of 150 workers in at least 2 member states. So if the company is operating in 2 countries, 150 in each or more, then it must have a European Works Council provision. The purpose of the European Works Council is to ensure employees are informed and consulted on aspects of employment and decisions that will impact on their employment. So it's making sure that the employees understand what the company is doing and what the company is planning and considering. It's making sure that the employees are informed. There are no surprises. Under the European Works Council, the organisation must demonstrate consistency with information that they share. They must show that there is consistency. You understand there's a logic in what they're proposing. They're not being capricious and just issuing policy statements. The company can't just do that for the sake of it. They must have a logic, there must be consistency, and it must be applied fairly within the organisation, particularly if it operates in different member states of the European Union. The company can't discriminate in favour of one country, or the operation in one country against the other. So there should be fairness right across the system. That's what the European Works Council is trying to ensure. Clearly we can see here that this may impact on corporate strategy and on the design of corporate strategy, and may not be to the benefit of the organisation if it's trying to compete effectively with, let's say, cheap imports because of globalization and high rates of technical change in different parts of the world and so on. You can see that there are issues that complicate this matter. So it's not something which is taken as a given. This is somewhat controversial. It could be debated. For example, employees working in different EU countries must be informed about the same policies and procedures the organisation embeds. So it must look at what the organisation is embedding in one country and ensure that it gets the same in another. That it's dealing fairly with all the different components of its organisation, particularly if they're distributed throughout the European Union. But as I said, there is a potential there for problems, commercial problems, if the company is facing cheap imports, as I said earlier, or high rates of technical change, or changing customer requirements, or changing tastes amongst the consumers. There are issues that need to be addressed. So in this class we've talked about issues in employee participation and the way employee participation is conducted and different ways in which employees may be consulted and dealt with and informed, and uh, how to avoid disputes or attempt to avoid disputes through good processes of communications, and to ensure continuity of employment and also long-term prosperity for the business. But bearing in mind that the more open the business is, the more competitors may know about the business also. So there are issues. But that's all we're going to deal with here, so let's leave it at that. Those are some of the references that were consulted throughout, and that's it for the moment. So let's say thank you for watching.